All right, guys, welcome back to another video. We have some more Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition stuff, plus some other Xbox news like the Baldur's Gate 3 stuff I want to talk about. So let's just jump right into this quickly. First here, we have Wedbush Securities, and they are a huge group, and they believe that the Activision Blizzard deal is going to go through. They talk a bunch of stuff here, financial stuff that I don't fully 100% understand, but they do mention here with regards to the deal of Activision Blizzard. Dan Ives, who is the person who has been quoted in this article, he's an analyst there, says that despite the recent regulatory worries, the deal will ultimately prevail in both the US and Europe, with the Call of Duty maker coming into Microsoft's coffers by late summer. So they believe that this deal is going to go through. I'm sure they have lots of investments that depend on this deal either going through or failing or whatever, but they're confident right now. That's just another thing to think about with the Xbox Activision Blizzard deal. One of the things is that he mentions here the late summer. What could that mean? Could that mean July? Could that mean August? The latest probably would be August after they go to court with the FTC if it gets all the way to there. But analysts have also said right at the beginning of this thing, this is going to close by the end of June most likely. And right now it seems we are on track. It's the CMA that is the biggest roadblock, I think. Again, he doesn't mention here. He says Europe. I don't know if he's referring to Europe all, including the UK, or if he's just referring to the European Commission. But the CMA is the biggest regulatory body here that most people have their concerns with, which there are dates coming up where Microsoft is going to be able to fight their case with the CMA. In fact, if we go over here to Florian Mueller and Foss Patents, we can see here that we're getting closer to those dates as the response hearing is coming. I believe it is coming next week with the CMA, and then they have a decision deadline, as you can see down here, for the end of April, what their final decision is. And then the earliest closing date we could see potentially happen would be May 1st. So that's right now where we are right now with the CMA stuff. And then when it comes to the European Commission, to the EU, we had that merger hearing. That was last week. We heard about that. Tons of stuff came out of that. And then the decision deadline for that one is going to be in the beginning of April. So it's getting down to the wire here. The next month is going to be really interesting. Going through April is going to be very interesting. Lots of more information is going to come out. Now, when it comes to Brad Smith, we know that Brad Smith put out that post talking about Nintendo 10-year deal, Call of Duty, and his wording on it was very confusing. I don't fault anybody from reading that and asking the question is did he mean all Xbox games or more Xbox games other than Call of Duty? Because he did say Xbox games in the tweet, and he clarifies it here. It is only Call of Duty. He says, we want the record to be clear and address any misunderstandings. I'm delighted to repost below this statement and affirm Microsoft's strong commitment to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo's customers if our acquisition of Activision Blizzard is approved by regulators. He says Microsoft and Nintendo have now negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players the same day as Xbox, with full feature and content parity, so they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty. We are committed to providing long-term equal access to Call of Duty to other gaming platforms, bringing more choice to more players and more competition to the gaming market. So there it is. Just Call of Duty, not other Xbox games. And again, when he first put out that tweet, it was confusing, but logically they probably had no plans. Like, why would they go out of their way to bring first-party Xbox games to Nintendo, especially with the current Nintendo Switch out there? They wouldn't even be able to run it. It would all have to be done through the cloud. So if they obviously weren't going to step aside and do that as well, unless, which is something I think that they would do, if they made a deal with Nintendo to get Game Pass and Xbox Cloud Gaming on the platform on Nintendo Switch. I'm sure they would go ahead with that, just getting access to all of the Nintendo Switches out there. But just Call of Duty, and he confirms that here, which I think will clear up any questions that people have about those statements. So that's a couple of updates for Xbox Activision Blizzard. And now I want to talk about this, Baldur's Gate 3. So Baldur's Gate 3, they showed off a trailer at the PlayStation State of Play. They announced it only for PlayStation on that trailer and PC, but they left out Xbox. And people were wondering, is this another game that PlayStation has money added to stay off of Xbox and have some sort of stupid timed exclusivity for the PlayStation platform to be a console exclusive? We know what happened with Final Fantasy VII Remake. Games never coming to Xbox, and I think that's just a shame, especially because they brought over Crisis Core and then they're to Xbox, and they're like, well, here is the prequel to the game you're never going to be able to play on your console, which is just so stupid. But people are worried that Baldur's Gate 3 was going to have the same effect, and that is not the case. There's actually something weird going on here, which I fully don't understand how this happens, but here is what Larian, on the subreddit, they say here. Hey all, thanks for all the hype and enthusiasm following yesterday's announcement that Baldur's Gate 3 is coming to PS5 day and date with PC on August 31st. Xbox players, we've seen your questions about it. If, when you can expect Baldur's Gate 3 on Xbox. We've had an Xbox version of Baldur's Gate 3 in the works for some time, but we have run into some technical issues, particularly with split screen co-op. It always seems that split screen co-op is a problem. We saw it with, they had to take it out of Halo 5. We saw it with Halo Infinite where they just completely dropped it, a terrible decision. And now more split screens co-op stuff is happening here with Baldur's Gate 3. Continues here and says, we are still working on the Xbox version of Baldur's Gate 3, but we're not yet confident enough to announce it. We don't like announcing anything until we're ready because we don't want to get people's hopes up until we are sure we can deliver. There's no platform exclusivity preventing us from releasing Baldur's Gate 3 on Xbox day and date, should that be a technical possibility. If and when we do announce further platforms, we want to make sure each versions live up to our standards and expectations. Thanks for understanding. So there's a couple of things here. People are kind of getting confused. They have not announced that this game is delayed on Xbox. It is still coming to Xbox. Right now, you should be expecting it August 31st, but they need to work out these technical issues. And I guess they do say there's nothing preventing them from releasing BG3 on Xbox day and date, should that be a technical possibility. So unless that possibility just crumbles and they can't get the things worked out before the release date, you should still be expecting it August 31st. Now, I just don't fully understand this. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not a developer, so I could be just completely out in left field here, and there's a reason why I don't understand it because I'm not a developer. But how are there so many technical issues on the Xbox version of this game when realistically you look at these games, they're all using x86 architecture, PC, PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X and S. This isn't like back on the PS3, Xbox 360 days where you had the cell processor on PlayStation. This isn't like back on even previous generations where it was just completely different, developing games for the different consoles. I mean, you remember the Super Nintendo and Genesis days where you had the same game and they were just different on each console because it took different abilities, I guess, to develop them on those platforms. But here it's almost like, from what I understand, don't you develop these games on PC and then you bring them over to Xbox and to PlayStation, and it should be a lot simpler for process. How is the Series X and the Series S, and the Series X in particular, which is the more powerful console, you would think they would have more leeway? How are they having issues with split screen co-op only on Xbox? Maybe it's the Xbox Series S that's holding them back and they can't make the announcement until that happens. But I mean, we've seen so many examples this generation of the Series S just performing phenomenally and not holding back any games at all. To me, this comes down, I guess, to each developer and being able to optimize properly for each platform. So I'm just confused why on Xbox there is that issue, because if you even look here, if you look here at the specs, the minimum specs that they call out here for PC, I mean, it is much weaker than the Xbox. So an NVIDIA GTX 970, 8 gigs of RAM, Intel i5 4690. So, I mean, if it can run on this stuff here, these are the minimum requirements needed to play it on PC. Should be able to run on the Series S, should be able to run on the Series X, no problem. But apparently they're having problems, and people are calling this out. People are creating a conspiracy theory around this because there was advertised at the PlayStation State of Play that they aren't being completely truthful with this statement here. I don't believe that. I do believe that they are being truthful, but people are thinking that this may have something to do with PlayStation paying some money to hold this game back on Xbox. I mean, these are questions people always have when this pops up. And a big reason people talk about this is because recently we had that Capcom document leak, which people thought that was showing that there was some sort of parity clause within those documents for PlayStation with Resident Evil. Now, those documents have all been taken off pretty much. You could go find them, but they're not easily accessible right now. They all were taken off Twitter and everything. But from what I understand is that it wasn't really truly a parity clause. It was just something that you put in for multiple different games. We had Daniel Ahmad here commenting on this, showing that this was an example as well that Xbox had with one of their licensing agreement. He says, been getting a ton of questions, so here's another clarification on the Sony Capcom marketing deal contract. The part about technical parity is being misinterpreted. It's also not related to the marketing part. It's standard clause for both PlayStation and Xbox publisher agreements, and he has a publisher agreement here from Xbox saying, for example, here's the Xbox publisher license agreement, which has the same wording, and this isn't even for a marketing deal, which is the features and content parity stuff. So people are looking at this and they were thinking, because the PS5 is a weaker console, they would be put a clause in place for these games that they make these deals with to make sure that the games run the same way on the PS5 and don't get an advantage on the Xbox Series X. And people are thinking maybe there's something going on here with Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, I don't think so, but it's just interesting how there are these issues like this. I would love to know how this happens when realistically the Series X is more powerful than the PS5, so there shouldn't be that many issues with doing this. So a lot of people are also pointing to the fact it may just be the Series S. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, the game doesn't look that graphically intensive. I'll be completely honest from the trailers that they did show off, but definitely co-op is a different beast. We've seen multiple issues with split screen co-op over the last number of years of those motions getting cut out of games. But I'm going to leave that here, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the Activision Blizzard stuff and the Baldur's Gate 3 stuff. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you're new, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.